Hello everybody and welcome to this amazing top 5 list of TydeTyme's least favorite gods from 2015. There have been a lot of additions to the roster over this last year in Smite, and I feel that I should finally reveal the top 5 gods I just don't like. The rules for this list are simple. I picked the gods that I simply do not like. This could be due to their kit, playstyle, viability, so on and so forth. Remember that this is a personal list full of opinions. And with that out of the way, internet, I'm ready for your rage. Number 5.
Zeus!
For anyone who watches my videos, you should know this god had to be on the list. It's simple. Zeus is ruined for me. Yes, you can complain I don't know how to play him or I build wrong, but to this day, ever since the remake of this god, I have never lost to Zeus in Joust. A lot of my spite comes from the love I have for this god. He wasn't a very viable god, I agree, and he needed the change. However, the change they made to Zeus was simply one-sided for conquest. Sure, he became a viable burst mage, but he lost all of his potential in Joust. The removal of his root from his ultimate was a much needed change. This change of his shield ability just wasn't needed. This shield works great as a clear and an amazing shield for your opponent. It will block your basics and create a small AoE shock that can be easily avoided by stepping out of the range. Additionally, it does not proc any on-hit effects, therefore if you try Hasten Fatalis, the effect does not apply if your basic lands on the shield, which keeps the debuff on you, the movement debuff specifically. This drastically hinders Zeus's boxing potential and forces him to literally remain as a burst mage. With that being said, now his passive doesn't settle well with his kit anymore, and he is left to be a mid laner of conquest. Rest in peace, attack speed Zeus. Number 4.
Ratatoskr.
This is possibly the most adorable god in Smite. He's cute, fluffy, small, and annoying. Back upon his release, he was an absolute beast and was recently nerfed. He, however, is hindered in his build currently. Thanks to his passive, Ratatoskr takes the 4th spot of this list. For those who don't know what Ratatoskr's passive is, it's essentially that small acorn that sits in his inventory. This acorn serves as a full item which has moderately nice stats and even provides his abilities with upgrades. The downfall? It's an item. Every other god has a kit that works to its full potential for the most part, with all sorts of control and effects. Ratatoskr is actually limited with some relatively weak abilities until he upgrades this acorn. Once the acorn is upgraded, Ratatoskr is finally even to the other gods. Or is he? Since that acorn takes up a slot in his inventory, he is unable to fully counterbuild an opponent in Joust. He does alright and you can possibly win your fights, but it's too easy for another opponent to use items as a form of countering Ratatoskr with the utility from that item. I can't tell you how many attempts I've made that I would need to just have one more item in my build to defeat my opponent, and I simply can't get that one to fit since I have this damned acorn. It's so frustrating too, since he isn't a bad god at all. This is another one of those gods that can perform well in team fights, but since I don't have the ability to counter build, he's ruined for Joust. Number 3.
Sun Wukong.
Hold the hate for just 1 second. I know what you're saying. Wukong's your favorite. Wukong's the best. He's a pretty good god. He's great in conquest. And that's right where we draw our line. If you haven't found the theme that is this list, it's that its gods I don't like are typically not viable in Joust. This is because I might really love these gods, but due to their kit, I can't play them at a high level since so many other gods can beat them. Sun Wukong is one of those gods. He has a great early game presence where he can be tanky and deal effective damage. However, he becomes a weak meat shield by the late game, and there is literally nothing he can do in majority of the situations. It wasn't even until recently that Sun Wukong was shining in Conquest with that nifty bluestone pendant, as it heavily amplified his early game. However, that's the problem I have with Sun Wukong. Joust isn't about that early game since it fades off pretty fast in comparison to Conquest. Looking at it, he could get a good head start, but once the opponent catches up, his kit will not have the strength required to take his opponent down unless they themselves were low on the tier list for Joust. One day, Sun Wukong, one day we'll see you in Joust. Number 2.
Neshama.
It's a trap! I mean, seriously, he just recently gets reworked into something more beautiful. Hi-Rez probably did something good, I think. Anyways, on to Neshama taking number 2 on my list. This time, I just legitimately don't like this god. He isn't viable in Joust, and there isn't anything I really like about him. He's a unique god too, which is sad because he's one of the only gods I can recall having a cinematic ult that requires quick time events to actually dish out his crits. I mean, sure, we never miss those buttons, but still. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of playing an all-or-nothing god either. Neshama is exactly that. With his kit, he is essentially designed to sash an opponent, remove them from the fight with his ultimate, and probably kill a squish. Obviously, a basic tactic, which is also easily countered by beads. Of course, there are very clever ways to get around this, such as baiting the beads and working other combos in between the sash and the ultimate, but in the end, Neshama falls in line with the rest of the gods on this list. They're just not viable for Joust. And it pains me to see a potentially fun god unable to perform well simply because they're denied a real escape. Number 1.
A Wheelix.
I already know a lot of people love this god. I already know she's an amazing jungler. For once, this is a god that can potentially joust. So why is she my least favorite? Take a look at this footage. Notice that the footage looks a bit different than our current Season 2 Joust. This is because this was prior to Season 2. This footage was a Wheelix's first release, and I think this was after a patch of her first release. The reason I don't like a Wheelix was due to this first impression, and it was a mess. Wheelix's abilities were not always as tight as they are now. Her Spirit Panther was heavily delayed and very unreliable. And I don't even think that this video was upon Wheelix's original release. I believe it was one buff after. And so her original release was even worse, which I did play her at the time. But because Wheelix was underperforming so hard upon release, I immediately grew this intense dislike for her. I can't exactly explain it, however it's very similar to another god who would have easily taken this spot if not for his recent rework. Raven was also a god I considered putting on this list due to his original release being so poor. However, his rework was enough to change my outlook on this god. Maybe because I liked and was very excited for Raven upon his release. Wheelix, on the other hand, I feel a bit indifferent about. I didn't really care about her at release, and I wasn't particularly excited. She was just another god at the time. Then when she was playable, I couldn't get over the delay on the abilities, the fact the targeter would highlight CC immune gods while they were airborne. It was just terrible. For anyone who remembers it, please remember that it was just so bad. Wheelix was like Raven. She was released with so many issues that it ruined that experience for me. And even with her various buffs she received over time, that didn't fix that first impression, which Raven did. Wheelix is without a doubt my least favorite god of Smite. So what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you have your own lists? Share it with me in the comments below. I'd love to know who you guys do and don't like. Personally, this list was more about underpowered gods than overpowered gods, as I know a lot of players might list off very powerful gods they hate fighting. But this is because for me, a super powerful god can still be fun to play sometimes. However, when a god is underperforming, that becomes boring, being it's either an easy win for my team if the opponent is playing them, or it's more of a chore when I have to play them. If you guys like this list, please share the video with your friends. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And as always, good game!